March the 4th is World Book Day, and to celebrate, Mrs. Daly has asked us would we possibly read out from one of our favourite books. I'm going to read you from a book now that I wrote called Witness X. And the reason I'm reading from my book is not to show off, but to show you that anybody could write a book. And it's really exciting if you write your own book and you can make up the stories as you go along. And this particular part, Akira has invented a machine that can read people's memories and experiences. And she is attached to a soldier called Brownrigg, and she's seeing something that he saw when he was a soldier. The low booming growl of mortar fire filled Kyra's head, quickly followed by the rapid crack of gunshots. She was still sightless, but all around her she could hear bawled orders and yelps of pain. Over everything was a blanket of suffocating heat. She jolted backwards as the visual burst into life, and she saw figures in desert camouflage uniform carrying weapons as they ran for cover, like a horrifying clip from a war movie. In front of her eyes, no, she had to remind herself it wasn't her eyes, but Brownrigg's eyes, a crumbling wall exploded into rubble. Everything became a blur of yellows, browns, khakis, beneath the sunlight so harsh it hurt to look. Was this Afghanistan? Basra? Helmand, maybe? It took her back to when she was a child playing with Emma on the carpet while her dad watched the news on the screen. The scene suddenly switched, the desert sun setting low, a melting golden ball sinking into the horizon, the sky daubed with dazzling orange and lilac. Kyra dropped her gaze to see desert fatigues, well-worn army boots, and a rifle clutched in her hands. Some instinct told her it was a 59 Mini-Me, even though she'd never held a gun in her life. She inspected the smattering of fair hairs catching the light, the muscles that tensed beneath the freckled skin. These weren't her hands, her arms. They were Brownrigg's. Night fell hot, dusty black, not city black like she was used to, where the light pollution sent out a constant glow. This darkness was an inky cloud smothering her, pitch pouring into her eyes, her ears, her mouth, so that it was difficult to breathe. Had she lost transference on the machine? But her eyes slowly adjusted and she gazed around. Up ahead she saw the tiny glimmering lights of oil lamps in the square cut-out windows of a mud-built, flat-roofed house. Clusters of shrubs and grasses rose behind them, and beyond that, sand and rock that she imagined stretched out as far as the horizon. She made a few more observations through Brownrigg's eyes, registering and logging details as his body swiveled around until her gaze came to rest on two soldiers, one male, one female. Brownrigg held his fist up and they stopped still. There was no sound. Kyra tapped her VR headset. Then there was a crackling in her ear and a voice came over the radio. Execute. Brownrigg jabbed a single finger and led the others towards the houses. She could feel the grit of tiny stones beneath his boots as he crept forwards. There were 3 wooden doors in this small complex. Kyra watched as he directed the 2 soldiers to the outer ones and he stood in front of the central one. A 3-finger countdown and they disappeared into the buildings. Brownrigg entered blind, his gun pointing the way. She could feel his heart rate rising. There was no night vision device. The only light, a small torch attached to the barrel of the gun, casting a tiny beam of brightness around as he searched his property. Clear, came the male soldier's voice. Clear, echoed the woman. A movement ahead caused Kyra to catch her breath. Brownrigg crept closer to examine a bundle of rags on the ground. She could feel the tension in his shoulders as he held his rifle close to his chest. The scraps of cloth at his feet appeared to squirm. She felt his body as he stepped back into stance, his finger twitching at the trigger. A small, fragile hand appeared slowly from beneath the rags, then the fevered face of a young boy. Brownrigg immediately relaxed his body and blew out a lungful of air. He swung his rifle round on its strap so that it rested against his shoulder blades, and he knelt down. You okay, mate? Feeling poorly? The boy looked blankly at him. Brownrigg reached out to feel his forehead. The child moaned and tried to move away. Don't worry, mate, we'll get you help. He sat back on his haunches and went to reach for his radio. As he did so, the boy's other hand shot out from beneath the material. He was holding a curved, rusted blade. He lashed out awkwardly at Brownrigg, but it was enough to do damage. A poker-hot sensation traced a jagged line across Kyra's throat, followed by a burst of adrenaline and panic coursing through her body, through Brownrigg's body, as he jerked backwards. The child jumped up, shedding the tattered cloth, face jubilant. Outside the house, a man shouted unrecognisable words, and the boy stood up straight, alert. The crack of a rifle cut the voice dead. The child hesitated, blade still in hand, and then spat viciously in Brownrigg's face as he lay grappling at his throat, the blood seeping wet and hot through his fingers. Then the boy ran through the door. Brownrigg flailed and writhed on the ground in blind panic. He kicked out, knocking a small table that clattered to the ground, the sound of glass breaking. Kyra gulped in air, feeling his primal fear. She heard his colleagues shout to one another. A single gunshot, then the silence of the desert.